Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the latest Hangout, the Power Play Chess Hangout. I'm going to be looking at some recent games from the US Championship and from the Shamkir tournament as well. And if that doesn't bore you to death. And what else? Well, I'll be answering your questions as usual. Many people will be joining me live too, and they can ask me questions in the chat. Of course, many of you will be watching this afterwards as well, and welcome to you all too. So just quick recap. This takes place once a month, and it's all down to my patrons who fund this basically. But of course, it's great to have everyone else here as well enjoying the show. I've got my chat over here. I can see everyone. Hi from Marcus Chong in Malaysia, 2 a.m. in Malaysia. Great to see you, Marcus. And Tim is there. Yay, working. Indeed it is. And Manoj Krishna as well. Great to see you all. Thanks for joining me. It's fantastic. So just to go into a little bit more detail about what I'm going to be looking at today, I'm going to be looking at Caruana's loss in the fourth round of the US Championship. He was doing very well, but he crashed. So we're going to look at that game. Quick slurp of tea there, very necessary. And we're also going to be looking at, Topolov's game against Mamedyarov. Oh dear, this is not a good start. My voice is cracking already. I was teaching a load of kids this afternoon, and they were very noisy, and I think my voice has been shredded, basically, which doesn't help. But yeah, Topolov beat Mamedyarov in this Open Spanish. Now, I'm not going to look at that game again because, of course, I posted it on the channel. But I want to look at a little bit more, around that game, the opening, and a couple of, famous games, or maybe not so famous, I don't know, but a couple of games from way back that are very connected with Topolov's win. And you can see the strategy very, very clearly. Greetings, Gabe, in LA. US Championship. Go Fabi and quit pressing too hard. He's already on fumes. Yeah, that's my impression. I think Fabi is running on fumes at this moment, and he could crash if he's not careful. I think he was running on adrenaline after the candidates, but now he's running on fumes. If he wins the US Championship, I will be amazed. And I will also be full of admiration, because to win 3 top tournaments in a row is extraordinary. But I think he's going to run out of energy. Let me see. Who else? We got Justin Houston, Herbert Stefan Gindel. Hello from Austria. Fantastic. Okay, let's get into this and take a look. The first game I want to look at is Fabi's game. So let me just check that I've got this up here. Yeah, looks good. So just bear with me while I switch windows, and hopefully we can get this up. Yeah, here we go. So you should see something on your screen with a bit of luck. There we go. I'll answer some of your questions in a second, but let me get into the game. We join this game. So Fabiano Caruana against Sviad Izoria, who is originally from Georgia, not not the state of Georgia, but Georgia in the Caucasus, not Georgia in the deep south. I mean, he's a decent grandmaster, but at the moment rated just around about 2,600. Of course, not in Fabiano's league, but not to be underestimated. This position was after move 40, they've reached the time control. And I have to say, I quite liked Fabi's position at this moment, just because he had a nice space advantage. There's some inquiries here about people are saying this is a Patreon stream, so non-Patreons like myself shouldn't be able to watch this. No, this is for everyone. Let's make it's clear. It's funded by Patreons. This wouldn't be possible. This broadcast wouldn't be possible if it wasn't for the support of my patrons, or my patrons, I should say. So you can be very grateful to them, but it's open to everyone. Just to clear that up. The reason I liked white here, I like Caruana's position, was because he has a nice space advantage. And if white can ever break through, then it's that d6 pawn. This is so often the problem with Benoni positions, sometimes King's Indian positions as well, that d6 pawn can be weak. White's problem here is, how do you break through? It's not easy at all. I mean, my first thought here was to redeploy the knight to e3 and somehow to try and force g4. So knight f1 looked to me like the first move. Put the knight on e3, play rook g1 and go for g4. Now, I think it's very difficult to achieve this. But, well, I thought that should be the way to go. I mean, there are various things that black can try. One move, interesting move, is to play knight c4 here, which at first glance looks a bit crazy. I mean, it's nice to attack this pawn. And when this is defended, obviously the knight comes to the dream e5 square, and then black has no difficulties at all. So the critical move has to be to take this. First, I thought this must be good for white. You must be able to pick up this pawn, but this is irritating. But also, once the bishop has been exchanged off, then there is a bit of pressure here as well. So it's actually extremely difficult for white to pick up this pawn. So if this is defended, let's say rook d2, you can see that takes away the d2 square. And, well, the knight can't come to e3 anyway. This knight can be redeployed, sometimes bishop here, sometimes knight d7. Sometimes you even just have to defend this. But I think this is actually a reasonable way for black to play, and I don't think black is worse at all there, actually. Let me see. Omkar Chakradeo, just let me break off for a moment. Omkar Chakradeo says, Danny, I want to play the King's Indian, but these guys like Kramnik, Korchnoi, and young Gustafsson, they say don't play the King's Indian, objectively not good. Okay, we have to understand that there is a massive difference between professional players and amateur players. I'm going to be very blunt about this. The top players understand how to control the counterplay, how to control the King's Indian attacking potential that black has. At lower levels, the King's Indian is an excellent opening. Same with the Benoni as well, if you understand it well, like any opening, if you understand it well. Because it's a very dynamic opening, lots of counter chances. And at lower levels, people don't really understand how to control these positions very well. So I would say even from, well, okay, I've got to be careful here, but 2,500 downwards, the King's Indian is absolutely fine if you know it well. I mean, there are players higher up the pecking order that also continue to play the King's Indian. Rajabov, for example, plays it. Garwin Jones, the English Grandmaster, regularly plays the King's Indian without any difficulties. Well, you can also, you can name other players as well. I just think at the highest levels, yeah, these guys are very. Kramnik is the prime example. I mean, Nakamura plays the King's Indian. He gets away with it. He's a tricky guy. But, if you're playing at club level, then the king to is absolutely fine. Anyway, I'll leave it there. Let's continue on with this game. If you don't mind, I'm not going to take any more questions for the moment. I want to continue on with the game. Otherwise, we'll be here all night. So knight f1, I think, can actually be met by knight c4, and probably among other moves as well. So knight d2 was played by Caruana. So I think he's basically looking to prevent this guy coming here. Now, very interesting. Izoria plays a long knight maneuver here. He basically plays the knight round to h6, looking at the g4 square and also potentially looking at e5 as well. And this works out extremely well. But interesting, he could actually play c4 here. And at first I was thinking, well, this is the move that white wants to see because the d4 square is available. But actually, the bishop comes to g4. So you notice when the knight's on e3, then it's a problem. But with the bishop on g, with the knights where they are at the moment, it's not a problem. Let's say the knight comes back. This is the point that this knight from b6 manages to redeploy itself extremely quickly on one of these squares. And although the knight comes to d4, which looks like the dream square, in fact, black has this completely under control. And then knight number 2 heads over. And c5, and this is absolutely beautiful. You can see the knight's looking at d3, looking at e4 as well. The bishop is beautifully situated on g4. The only question is, can you actually break through? Well, quite possibly actually, because already we're looking at playing the knight into d3, and then e4 is rather weak. So c4 actually would really take the initiative for black. The question here, what if bishop e2 instead of bishop c2? Good question. Yeah. Well, that covers the g4 square. I suppose he would have been worried that this pawn could be attacked, and from c2 at least it covers both these squares. But the question is, how do we get a knight round to here? Well, we could just drop back to c8 and then swing the knight in here, and the next knight comes in. So rather similar to the variations we've just been looking at. That's one possibility. I wonder whether I was just dreaming of bishop g4. Maybe not. I think bishop c8 is a good move, just to bring the knight via d7. I hope that answers your question. Yes, the bishop can come to f3, but you'll notice that the d3 square is then hanging. So let's put the knight here. And the knight comes in there. It's actually rather unpleasant for white. It's a bit static. So let's go back. So c4 I think is possible, but Izoria played knight c8. It's a very long-winded maneuver, but actually white isn't doing too much. So this knight switches round, and knight e3, and knight h6. So keeping g4 under control. Now, at this moment, black breaks with f5, so he's already starting to get a bit frisky and thinking, well, he can take the initiative here. But a very interesting move. He could have gone for c4 again. And that obviously completely closes down any opening for white on the queen side. And still possible maneuver of the knight to c5 or e5, or perhaps simply putting the bishop back. Well, we don't even need to do that. We could double on the e-file. Whoops, I'm highlighting the wrong pieces. Rook e7 and rook e8. Looks very attractive, actually, with f5. So I think c4 would have been an even more ambitious move. In the game, Isoria played f5. Well, if this is taken, then black has some initiative here, with knight number 2 coming around to e5 or maybe f6. And, or maybe even c4 as well, and knight c5. So Fabiano played b3. And now takes on b3. And here c4 is played. And takes on e4. Black has won a pawn, but at least Fabi manages to get a breakthrough on the queen side. So because of the pin here, he's threatening to take on c4, therefore rook a8. a4, I think this is pretty much forced. White needs to break. So what's the score? At the moment, well, white is still 1 pawn down, but I think at this moment, Fabiano would have been very pleased to get to this position, because he's finally got through to d6, and he's got somewhere for his rook to go to as well. Black is not worse here, on the contrary, but white certainly has enough counterplay in this position, where you can see that black is suddenly getting rather tied up. So the king will step out of pins, and the bishop comes round, wants to deal with this pawn. Knight b6, and the rook goes back, and the next knight comes over. Well, already it's possible just to take this pawn off, and well, I don't think either side is in danger of losing this position, actually. But it seems to me that Fabi was starting to think that he could be better here. Risky, as we found out. Why was he thinking he could be better? Well, because his pieces here are very active. And he's looking at this pawn, and maybe he can get these pawns rolling. King e3. I'll make the notation a bit smaller for you. How's that? Larger board. Just a little recap. People are wondering, where is this game from? Well, this is played in round 4 of the US Championship. Caruana against Isoria. Knight e5. Basically, black is holding things together here. So material is now even. Well, after this, actually, Fabi wins a pawn. So you can sort of understand why he thought, well, you know, I want to try and just keep pressing. You never know. And here, let's see what happens if you play c4. So trying to make something of this queenside pawn, extra pawn on the queen side. Then rook f8, and this is quite a serious counterattack. You can see white's pieces are just way across on the other side of the board. Rook f4 comes, the king goes back, then knight number 2 comes. This pawn is going to drop. It's also an attack against white's king, which shouldn't be underestimated. So Fabi played knight d7. I think, you know, he's looking to trade pieces here. Because he senses the danger. Now, bishop c6, well, there's a threat to take here, but also rook c4 check. And once again, there's an attack on the king. So that's why bishop c6 happened. The material is now even. Now, if you'd have told me that Caruana was going to lose this position, well, I've been absolutely amazed. 2 pawns each. White's king does not stand badly. But I think Fabi missed a big trick here. So here, of course, he's got to watch out for this pawn. But rook b5 check looks like a good move. So if the king moves, then we've got knight f6. And if d5, let's play this one. Check. And I think this one's going to end in a draw without any difficulty. But Fabi played here, knight takes g2. All right, this was insanely optimistic. But he was still thinking, well, you know, maybe I can take this pawn and this one's pretty far advanced. You never know. I think this is just the end of a long game. And, well, again, this is said with a great deal of hindsight, but if this is taken, give a check, and knight f6, this is going to end up as a draw pretty soon. Yeah, I mean, that pawn is going to be snaffled. Let's go back. But knight b6 played, and it's at this moment that I think Fabi started to overlook a few things. So if king takes, then now the h-pawn certainly is very dangerous indeed, and that one's not good. King e6 played, rook c6. Now, the best thing to do is to retreat the knight and start attacking black's king. And actually, this presents no difficulties for white at all. You can see for a moment the rook is just kind of offside. And it's going to be rook h1. You're going to be able to take this pawn. But Fabi played king d7, and he'd obviously overlooked black's next move. He was thinking, well, the rook's got to move. Maybe here, then I take this pawn, everything's fine. But he must have overlooked knight takes c4. A really sneaky tactic. A really sneaky tactic. Because after this, knight a5 check. This is the problem. And if king c7, we take and roll the h-pawn, and that knight is too far away. So this must have been what he missed. So king takes. So he didn't bother going for the knight, but he tried to bring his king back. But actually, black can keep the white king at arm's length. And indeed, the black king not only keeps white's king at bay, but also this knight. King is perfectly placed. Now we keep the king here, and it's just a question of bringing this knight into play. And here we go. White king simply can't approach. And here, Fabi resigned. So if king f2, the knight moves away, and h2, and the pawn goes home. So yeah, I found it very interesting because as I said, at move 40, I was still thinking, well, space advantage, maybe there's a chance for white to make something of this position, but actually it's black that has the better chances here. And yeah, it's a curious position, really. It's because white doesn't have a quick pawn break. And I think this variation here is very interesting indeed. This could well have been even stronger than the game continuation. I like this very, very much, to swing this knight around here. And at the end, yeah, I think Fabi just got tired. And I think he just completely overlooked this tactic after king d7, knight c4, and he's lost after knight c4. That's a problem. So there we go. Interesting stuff. So we're back again. Here we go. Right, now I can read some of your questions out. Oh. Andreas Mantz asks, is it possible that Fabi just used some kind of exclusion method? Everything but drawing lines? Maybe he couldn't imagine to lose. I don't know about an exclusion method. I mean, basically, he just overlooked a tactic. Simple as that. Tim Worrell asks, wasn't Vincent Keimer at Grenke remarkable? So my question, where is our British under-18 champion, or IM, or even FM? Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I've tackled this one before. People have asked about, you know, where's the next British Grandmaster or English or Grandmaster coming from? Who's the big talents in England or Britain? And when I'm going to give the same answer, and when I've given this answer before, then this often is greeted with incredulity. People just don't understand what I'm talking about. But I'll give the answer again. Basically, I think there are economic and sociological reasons why England isn't producing, well, we're producing strong players, but not players in the same caliber as, well, other countries do. Let's say India, or India, particularly India, China, and, well, you know, the Vincent Keimers of this world as well. What do I mean by that? Well, there is such massive pressure to succeed academically here and to get good grades, to get to a good university, to get a good job. And if you don't, then, well, I think life is tough, frankly. There's an argument. Well, you could argue that life is tougher than it used to be in, let's say, the 1970s and 1980s, when it was possible to be, well, let's call it a chess bum, and drift around with not very much money, and, you know, for a few years survive on a shoestring and just try and improve your game. Whereas I think society has changed. I think, yeah, there is much more pressure to get a good job, and if you don't, well, you know, we all understand about the housing crisis in this country. If you live in the southeast of England, it is extremely difficult to buy a house unless you have a very, very good salary. So that would be my reason. So basically, academic pressures take over in this country. Now, I'm only speaking for England, or, yeah, I'm not even going to say Britain. I'm speaking for England. But I think that's a really strong reason. And I see lots of kids who are incredibly talented around about the age of 10, 11, 12 years old. And they get distracted by their studies. And the game has become so professional these days that, you know, if you're not sort of 2600 by the time you're 18, then it's unlikely that you're going to make it as a professional, that you're going to be earning enough money. I think it's different in other countries where you can exist on far less money. So there you go. That's my two penneth. And there are lots of people who disagree with that. But anyway. Well, I mean, we could also talk about. I mean, I mentioned India. You know, there are so many strong young kids coming out of India now, and I think it's also to do with. I mean, there's such a strong uh, ethos, you know, to study academically, and it's acceptable to play chess and to study chess, and a lot of that's to do with Vichy, that they have a role model there. And for example, when they say to their school, well, my son or daughter is doing extremely well, can I take 2 months off? Then the school goes, yeah, great. You know, looks good for the school. They get it. Whereas in England, I think it's very different. Anyway, Jalek says this academic pressure in England sounds like one in India. Yeah, of course. I'm not saying there's not academic pressure elsewhere, and there is in India as well. But I think it's more acceptable in India to, as I said, to ask the school to take time off. I mean, I've asked lots of, you know, I've met lots of Indian kids traveling on the circuit, and they say their school has a very relaxed attitude to taking time off if they continue to get the grades. But they can actually take their kids out of school. Right. Zia says it's more about the proportion of the world population. Well, England has a pretty high density of population, and that's of course very, very important. You know, if you want competition. But we have that in England. You know, we have a dense, very dense population in the southeast of England. So I don't think it's to do with that. Tim Morrill says no more British GMs. Then no, there will be continue to you know, we're going to produce more GMs, but are we going to produce players of the 2700 level? I think realistically, you have to be 2700 to actually make a decent living. But you know, we will produce players, let's say, of 2600, but that's not the same. You know, not the same as producing a really strong professional player. Why am I in my shoes says David Howell came through this system, an exception, I guess. Yeah, he did come through that system. Absolutely. And that's just one player. But also, David is what, 27 years old now? That's one player in the past, you know, 10, 15 years. It's one player. Justin says David Howell was a child prodigy. Yeah, he was a child prodigy, but there are many child prodigies. That's it. I see child prodigies all the time. It's what happens to them afterwards, whether they continue. Okay, I've yacked enough about that. I'm going to look at some more chess. And I would like to look at some open Spanish stuff. If I can just fish up the board, so just bear with me while I look at this. No, it's disappeared. Hang on a second. Yeah, here we go, folks. Just one second. While I rearrange windows, and then we can get to this. So here we go. Now, so this is a game that Garry Kasparov played in a clock simultaneous exhibition in England in 1997. And go from the beginning. And it's exactly the same variation that Topalov played against Mamedyarov. So this was played. Now, his opponent, Gerald Botley, I don't know his strength, but I think he's basically just a club player. But this is a clock simultaneous exhibition at Oakham School. In fact, I think Gerald Botley was one of the teachers at the school from memory, but I might have got that wrong. And Kasparov was connected with the school and was, I think, funded a scholarship at Oakham School for a while. So it's the open Spanish, and this is such a double-edged opening. I have to say, I've never played this with black. I've always played the white side of the Spanish. But yeah, I've had mixed results. Well, maybe reasonable results with white. The odd disaster. But the reason I like this with white is that somehow you can always get attacking chances. And I think these games, well, Topalov's game has proved this, or showed it, demonstrated it very nicely. So bishop e3. Now, the main move here, knight d2. Leads to all kinds of interesting things after knight c5 and c3. Now, you can play d4 here, but then bishop e7 is possible. So that's something else. But bishop e3 really came to prominence in the 1980s. I mean, it's actually a very old move, but it came to prominence in the 1980s. And at that time was high fashion. These squares are very important in the open Spanish because white has to try to control black's queenside majority. And knight d2. So this is exactly the same as the Topalov-Mamedyarov game. We're following that game exactly. White has got rid of the strong knight in the middle and ideally would like to move the knight to advance the f-pawn. White wants to play rook d1 here, so there's potential threats here. So therefore knight a5. Not only looking at the bishop, but looking at this square and also freeing the c-pawn as well. Now the position gets very sharp because there's a threat to take here, but also a threat to play bishop f5. And this knight is looking at all kinds of interesting things. So bishop h6, hitting the rook. And rook e8 played. And queen d4. Now, instead of rook e8, Mamedyarov took on b2, and then it went queen e2, and rook e8, knight d4, and bishop d7, which was actually a new move, but it's what the computer likes, and I'll come back to that in a second. But rook e8 played. And previously, b3 had been played. And I think this is also actually quite promising for white. And this game here shows, I think, very nicely white's chances in this position. When you have a 4-3 pawn majority on the king side, if you can get in e6, then obviously you weaken the king. And white's development is very clear, very easy. Rook's in the middle, very harmonious, very classical. So black's queenside majority is very difficult to realize. And the game went like this, and it's quite clear that white has a very pleasant initiative in this position. H5 and so on. So b3 is possible, but Gary is in a bit more of a hurry. Instead of playing b3, he played queen d4, and he's just looking to transfer his queen to f4. And this was the game. And the queen transfers over. With the bishop on h6, covering f8, then the queen is actually pretty safe here. And there's a very obvious way to continue, which is to advance the h-pawn to chip away at black's position. And Kasparov just plays very, very naturally here. Attacking d5. And the rook comes in. And you can see that black really hasn't completed his development yet. This queen is still stuck on the back rank. But rook e1 is a really simple move. And it just highlights black's lack of coordination here. And that's pretty ugly. And the game didn't last too much longer. And that's a second pawn, and well, there's really not much point in going on from there. A complete crush. So there we go. I've actually got one more game that I'd like to show you, but I'll take a quick break and take some of your questions. Riaz Ali says, can we study the grob? No, you can play the grob, but don't. If you study it, you'll just get really depressed. But yeah, play it by all means. Why not? Why many of my shoes ask, do you like snooker? Are you watching the world? Nah. I think I used to watch snooker when I was a kid, and Steve Davis was playing. It's about the last time. I haven't got time to watch snooker. It doesn't interest me that much, to be honest. It's okay, you know. But I'm on bigger things. I'm on bigger tings, as the kids say. I have been watching football, though. Brentford FC, 1 point off the playoffs. And yeah, Steve Davis is actually a pretty good chess player, a very nice guy, and he's also he's very sharp. I was involved with an interview with him a couple of years ago, and it was very reflective about what it takes to be a top sportsman, and had some excellent insights actually. And yeah, very smart guy, I have to say. Beautiful Melody asks, what do you think about Dvoretsky? Well, Dvoretsky was a superb trainer, of course, and his material is excellent. Although I have to say that you have to be already a pretty decent player to actually understand what Dvoretsky is going on about. And for example, his endgame manual. I wouldn't recommend it for club players. I think there are far better books for club players, much more suitable for club players. It's simply too advanced. You will never use the material that's in there. Gabe, yeah, I agree. Silman's. Do you know what? Gabe says Silman endgame manual way easier. It's not that it's way easier, because the material that Silman presents there is incredibly important, and he layers it very, very well, and builds up really well. He shows knowledge in stages. So I think it's a very well crafted book, actually. But I wouldn't say, yes, some of it's easy because he starts at a low level, but actually he builds up to very complex positions as well. But it's the way he builds up, I think, is excellent. Do I ever play the Scandinavian? No, I don't think I've ever played the Scandinavian. No. Gives away the center. I mean, look, it's not a bad opening, the Scandinavian, at all. But openings are a question of taste, largely. But Scandinavian, never really been for me, I'm afraid. I'm a Sicilian man all the way. Fabio Farina says, Daniel, do you play any instruments? Yeah, I play the double bass, I play the electric bass, I play the electric guitar, I play the piano. There we are. Double bass is my favorite instrument, I've got to say, because I like playing jazz. Tim asks, is there any opening you've never played that you wish you had? Now, that is a good question. Yeah, if I had all the time in the world to study it, what opening would I play? Presumably we're talking with black here. I'm going to have to ponder that one. Yeah, I'm not sure, actually. I'm really not sure. Jalak says the French. Yeah, but I played the French. I played the French. Yeah, but maybe I should. I never studied it properly. Maybe I should study it properly. Let me see. Yeah, listen, I think Amit Bharati has just given me my answer. There you go. I wish I played the Petrov. Great opening. Fantastic opening. Arthur Miller says 100 Endgames by De La Villa. Yeah, it's a good endgame book, of course. I still prefer Silman. For club players, I would 100 Endgames You Must Know, very good. But I would still say Silman would be my first choice for club players. Christopher says, have you refuted all the anti-Sicilians? Nice closed variation seems sound for white. I haven't refuted all the anti-Sicilians. I'm slightly confused by that statement. I mean, I've played plenty of anti-Sicilians myself with white and faced them with black too. So I feel like I can talk about the anti-Sicilians with confidence, having played them with both sides. Yeah, I'm confused by that question. As white, I've always enjoyed playing bishop b5 check and bishop b5 against knight c6, for example. Hikmat Hussein asks, what is the best defense against d4, Nimzo or Slav? Okay, this whole thing about, what's the best opening? We're back on this one again. Let me tell you, there is no best opening. It's whatever suits you. It's whatever you feel comfortable with. You're basically, it's a bit like asking a painter, which color do I start with? Blue or red? That's what it is. It's a question of taste, what you feel comfortable with. Maz Kanata asks, does anyone know if Mr. King will do content for Spiegel during the championship? What a very odd way to formulate the question. I don't think anyone knows yet, but I hopefully will be providing content for Spiegel online during the Die Weltmeisterschaft. Boyan Maximovich says, give us some puzzles. Yeah, do you know what? It's a bit late for that. I think I'm running out of time. I was going to show you one more game. I'm going to show you one more game of Fred Yates. I'm a big fan. Why am I in my shoes? I went to Das Krulhaus for day 2 of the candidates. I found it a weird but interesting venue. What do I think of it? Actually, when I first went to Das Krulhaus, for those who don't know, this is the venue for the candidates. So I was there for the final 2 games of the candidates, and it was very, very exciting. I mean, it was an extraordinary climax for the tournament. And at first I thought the building, it's quite funky. Yeah, I kind of like that post-industrial thing going on. Lots of exposed brickworks, and I quite like looking down on the players. But actually, after a couple of days there, I just thought this venue was really horrible. The facilities were terrible. They couldn't even organize a decent cafe for spectators. It felt dusty. It felt dirty. I wasn't very impressed by it, actually, I have to say. They could have made it into a really great venue, but their attention to detail was poor. Well, not even detail. There was some, as I said, some basics that weren't there. I mean, shocking. You've got hundreds of spectators and there's no cafe. Incredible. Let me see. Cliff actually asks, am I going to cover any more of the US Open games? You mean the US Championship? It's certainly not an open tournament. Yes, I will be covering more from games from the US Championship. Not every day, but. Andreas Muntz said, it felt like the organizer didn't love chess. Well, anyway, I don't know. I'm running out of time. I'm going to show you a game very, very quickly. Just a second while I switch windows. This game is another Open Spanish played by Frederick Dewhurst Yates, Fred Yates, who was one of the strongest English players in the early part of the 20th century. So in the 1920s, I would say probably maybe around about 1925, 26, 27. He probably was the strongest English player, actually. So you can see this is exactly the same position as the Topalov-Mamedyarov game. Fred Yates, no relation to W.B. Yates. No relation at all. Fred Yates was English and was from Yorkshire. W.B. Yates was Irish. Now, so Mamedyarov played Bishop D7 here. This was played in the British Championship in 1914. Gunsberg played Knight C4. I'm just going to have to zip through this one very quickly, but this shows you incredible similarity between the Toppy Mamedyarov game. And this is classic Yates. He was a classical player and liked attacking. Now, both players made errors here. But so I'm just going to crash on with the game because I'm running seriously short of time. And now F5. So this is very typical English chess. It's straightforward. It's route one, and it's the kind of thing that Toppy likes to do as well. And here, Gunsberg played D3, and this was a mistake. There was a very interesting variation. He could have taken on E6, exactly as Mamedyarov did. Well, I say exactly, not exactly the same position, but he could have given up a piece like this. And Knight E3, it's a fascinating variation. So black gives the piece back. And this still looks rather uncomfortable. But actually, after this, let me have a look at this. There is a fantastic move. I mean, this is obviously a computer move. Black is the exchange up, and white still has pressure here. If the king were to drop back, I dare say that... Oh, no, sorry, that's impossible. The bishop is on prise. So bishop g5, for example, is a threat. But king e6 is an incredibly cool move. And then king d6, and the king just marches away. It reminds me of two things. It reminds me of Ding's game against Geary from the other day in Shamkir, but also reminds me of how Petrosian played, or could have played, against Fischer. There is a game from 1970, the Soviet Union against the rest of the world match, where Fischer played Petrosian. And Petrosian also could have marched his king out at one moment. And this is absolutely fine for black. It's incredible. It's the kind of continuation you can imagine that Korchnoi might have found. But instead, the game went like this. And now he took on e6. King h8 is still okay there, apparently. But anyway, let me just show you this. And here, black resigned. So material is even for the moment, but this bishop hangs. And if rook takes here. And here, white is just a piece up, and it's going to win that one. So there we go. I'll leave it there. That game was from 1914, so just over 100 years ago. I mean, it's a nice attacking game, but it shows, I think, how much defensive technique has improved in 100 years. You know, these guys just didn't defend very well. They didn't calculate very well compared to the professionals nowadays. You know, he crumbled, basically. Whereas, well, Mamedyarov lost, but he didn't crumble. He made some inaccuracies in time pressure. I mean, maybe people will be laughing in 10, 20 years' time about Mamedyarov's poor technique in failing to hold that endgame position. But there you go. I'm going to have to leave it there. Thanks, Tim. They were glad you enjoyed those games. Yeah, I think that's about it. I can't see. Well, there's questions about the World Championship. Who has more chances? Rohit Rubber asks, I can't find your Swahili videos here on this channel. Sorry, guys. No Swahili videos. I'll be looking at more games from Shamkir and the US Championship. Oh, I should say there's a new Power Play DVD coming out. Well, I think it's already in the shops, actually. If you have a look at the ChessBase shop, If you have a look on chess, whoop, I can't seem to. There we go. Chessbase.com. If you look at chessbase.com and you go to the online shop, you'll see the latest DVD, and it's called Checkmate Challenge, and it's in 10 sections, 100 positions in 10 sections, starting with basic checkmates. Once you solve that level, you go on to level 2, and they get more complicated until the checkmates in level 10 are brain busters. So if that interests you, if you want a little challenge, if you want to improve your checkmating technique, these checkmating patterns, I think, are incredibly important. You know, if you have them at your fingertips, then you can find them quickly in the game. You know, if you're in pressure, under time pressure, got a few moves to make, then if you can spot these patterns very, very quickly, it is a massive help. So that's what this DVD will help you with. So Checkmate Challenge, new DVD, or indeed download. I've been picked up on that before. You can buy it as a download as well. Available from chessbase.com, out now. Right. I'll see you later, guys. Thanks for watching. Thanks for joining me.